This podcast is part of the Frederick Podcast Network. Learn more at listenfrederick.com.
Welcome back to Mental Health and Me. As always, I love to be in the studio, but I've had this episode kind of on my radar for a while, and it's taken me a bit to put it into words, what I wanted to say. Now, for those of you who know me, I'm not big on TV or movie watching. It's just not something I generally find a lot of time to do. But a few months ago, a movie was coming out that absolutely piqued my interest, and I couldn't wait to go see it. It was actually one of the few movies I made the time to go see in theaters, and this movie was Inside Out 2. Now, most of you have probably heard of this movie. It's the sequel to Inside Out, but I went to take my children to see this movie. It was definitely on my radar of something I wanted to see. I loved the first one, so I made it a point to go to the second one. Now, if you saw the first one, you know that it's about a little girl and it's about the emotions in her head. And they call that area where they live headquarters. And the 5 emotions that are introduced in the first movie are joy, sadness, fear, anger, and disgust. So as a therapist, I love the visualization of the first movie and how it explained how the emotions were in control of different things that were happening and how the emotions switched places. And just the whole thing, I think, flowed really well. So when the second one came out, I was excited. I wanted to see what they were going to do. And this is when they had the little girl, her name's Riley, hit puberty. So when this happens, some new emotions get introduced. Anxiety, ennui, which is kind of like boredom, embarrassment, and envy. So we have this new crop of emotions coming in. Well, let me take it back a quick second, because something that stood out to me after I saw the first movie is I cried. I mean, it was just so beautiful, and the visualization was so powerful. And it absolutely just brought me to tears. I liked the movie so much that I went back again with a group of therapists. And guess what? We all cried. It was just that good. Now, we're adults, right? We're watching a literal cartoon kids movie, and it brought us all to tears. So I've seen this movie a third time because I watched it one more time for preparing for this podcast. Then I cried again. And it just really was something that I feel like anybody can relate to, especially if you have teenagers, but even still, if you didn't, that would be okay. I think you'd still relate to it. So I asked myself, looking at the people who were with me and saw it and still felt that same emotional connection, what was going on? And for me, it was twofold. One, I'm on the cusp of this movie being the story in our home. Right now, my kids are in that sweet spot of parenting with no diapers, but no dating, right? We haven't quite hit the teen years, but they're coming. And the first big development you see in the movie is they have these little islands which represent personalities in the brain. And you see as this girl gets to her high school years, you see as this girl gets to middle school and then into high school, that Friendship Island gets really large, but Family Island is starting to get smaller. So I know that's coming. And I say that I'm ready, but I'm not. But this is exactly what's right on the cusp, and I know it's there. The other thing that just stood out to me is that I saw myself in this movie. I saw myself as a teen, and I saw myself even now sometimes where things feel completely out of control, and I'm living this story, and they just visualize it so powerfully. So if we go back to the movie and we're in the headquarters, remember this represents the brain, and things seem to be going well. And you see the 5 original emotions just hanging out up there. And you learn that these emotions and memories and thoughts are all beliefs that make up a sense of self. There's these great strings that they kind of link to something. And then, hey, you get this sense of self. Now, joy, the one emotion, she really wants to be in control of that. And it would seem up to this point she mostly had been. However, the other emotions, they're still given space to run the control panel. But most of the things kind of land on joy. So when we still have these 5 emotions, they're navigating pretty well. It seems like it's going okay. And one of the first lines that I really connected with in this movie is the emotion joy is going somewhere in the back of the brain, and she invites sadness along. And sadness says something like, "You want me to come?" And joy says, "Where I go, you go." And I thought that was so powerful, wasn't it? The idea that what brings us joy also brings us sadness. And if you sit with that, I think that's such a powerful thought and such a powerful realization. There's no way to avoid the great sadness and have the great joy. I wish there was, but it just isn't. And so coming to terms with the fact that those 2 emotions are really hand in hand, I think was the first major thing that spoke to me, because we often want to avoid the sadness, and sometimes we eliminate the joy by trying to not feel the sadness. And so the idea is to invite them both. We don't want sadness to certainly be the more powerful emotion, but we want to make space for them to both coexist. Another really funny line is Joy wanted to do something and she says, "Have I ever steered you wrong before?" And the emotion says back, "Actually, yeah, like lots of times." Again, that's a great thought there. We always try to tell people, right, don't worry, be happy. But sometimes joy will steer you wrong. You do have to also allow the other emotions in. You should not just always land in a situation where you think, I'm going to smile through it. I'm not going to speak out for myself. I'm not going to allow these other emotions in. I'm just going to be happy all the time, no matter what. That's really not the way it should work. We need to have space for all of them. Now, the point of the movie that I think is going to be the big turn is obviously the 5 original emotions. They're hanging out. They think life is good. And then the new emotions come in. And anxiety in particular doesn't come in just with a trickle. It's not like it comes in a little at a time. It comes in like a full-blown wrecking ball and absolutely destroys headquarters. And isn't that how it feels? When anxiety shows up, it just comes in so powerfully. And the other emotions don't even know what's happening. And then here you have this little emotion, anxiety. Now, anxiety serves a purpose. Anxiety says, hey, I'm here to prepare for the future. I'm going to protect Riley, the little girl, from the things she cannot see. And that is what anxiety is doing. The anxiety typically exists in the future, right? The idea is that I'm preparing you for something bad that's going to happen. So that is why I'm here. Now, anxiety makes some good calls. There's a few things that happen and it's like, oh, good job, anxiety. Like that did serve a purpose. Dr. Amen, he's a psychiatrist I really like, and he has famously said that the goal is not to have no anxiety. People with no anxiety either end up in jail or dead. We should have some anxiety, but it needs to be a healthy limit. It should not run the show all the time. Now, joy, she often exists in denial. It's kind of like that thought of ignorance is bliss. And while I appreciate that, I think we all do it sometimes, I do also like that they showed, hold on, you just can't live there forever. There are some real life things that you need to prepare for, and anxiety in some ways helps with that. The problem comes, and you see this in the movie, is that as anxiety prepares for the future, there is no ending. There is no limit to what could possibly happen to any of us at any time in the future. No matter how much you prepare, no matter how many things you think you know what's going to happen, they could all go a totally different way just by one thing completely out of your control. What happens for some of us is that anxiety expands and goes on to catastrophic thinking. And that happens in the movie. They don't label it that way, but that's really what happens. You see anxiety get completely out of control and the negative thoughts and the negative possibilities just overwhelming the main character, Riley. And anxiety yells, and I so feel this. I could see the little anxiety in my brain screaming this. We need to be prepared. And that's what anxiety is doing. It's trying to prepare you for something. It wants to protect her from the things she can't see. And like I said, there were times that anxiety made the right call. I mean, anxiety can keep us safe, but it needs to be reined in. For some people, different emotions are going to be more intense. Right? For me, some emotions are more intense and they're stronger and they like to run the show more often. It's the same way in this character's brain. It's not equal. It'd be nice if we knew, okay, from this time to this time, I'm going to have this emotion and then this emotion. It doesn't work that way. Some are more powerful and that can be a good or bad thing. So some of you, joy still runs your show a lot and that's wonderful. I hope it can stay that way. For others of us, maybe it's anger, but either way, we want to recognize that we can control who's up there and who's controlling headquarters. Throughout the movie, Joy fights so hard to stay in control and just maintain. And I also wanted to point that out. There are times that to get joy and control in your brain is going to take a ton of work. I'm not always good at this. I really try to practice gratefulness exercises. I try to practice them with my children. But man, when it seems like everything is going wrong, it is such a fight to get joy back there and get joy to be the one controlling our thinking and our actions. Now, there's this other funny little thing that happens. Nostalgia shows up, and this is the teenage years. So they boot nostalgia out the door, and they say, oh, you're not allowed in here yet. But I liked the idea that we continue to emotionally evolve as we grow older. And I think that's really important. So, I certainly have nostalgia in my life now, but I liked that the little 13-year-old Riley it wasn't there yet, but they were going to invite her back when things got a little bit down the road. Another thing that was great is that we think of our emotion. Children, I have little kids. A stick can be anything. A tree can be anything. A pile of leaves can be anything. And they have such great imaginations. They just, my son found a piece of metal recently on this little Boy Scout trip, and all little boys made up this story about how it was an airplane and it was a piece of an airplane. And just the imagination is so large. And then we kind of wonder what happens to it. Well, we do want to fuel our imagination even in adulthood. But in the teenage years in this movie, what really happened was that imagination evolved to creating rumors. And anxiety used the imagination against the main character, against Riley. Has it ever happened to you where you realize, my gosh, the scenarios I am making up are so massive and so imaginative, and like, where do I even come up with this? Well, you still have your imagination, but we want to use it as a creative outlet and not use it as a tool to think of all the things that could possibly happen, because again, there's no limit on that. Just like a stick could be anything to a child, the future could be anything to an anxious adult. All of these emotions are visitors, and I think that's also something to remember. No one emotion represents the core self. And I think that's kind of where this movie goes, because we see anxiety and some of the newer emotions turn the old ones into suppressed emotions, kind of like shoves them back. So these basic emotions, the ones that we first learn, the joy, sadness, fear, anger, disgust, they get shoved into suppression and they're not really invited back. So those emotions kind of fight to get back in the movie. Something else that I liked is as these new emotions poured in to this character, Riley, I saw a theme that I see more often than any other theme in therapy, and that would be loneliness. I think people are very isolated. I think they're very alone. I think they often feel like they're the only person going through something. They don't know where to turn. They don't know who to trust. They don't know who to share with where it won't be used against them. And this character, Riley, everything she's experiencing, unless she's lashing out, is basically internal. She doesn't know what to do with what's happening in her head, and it is just causing her to make one bad decision after another. I think that happens with us, even as adults. I think that finding a friend or trusting someone with your information is not always easy. And I think it gets harder. I think that if you move, or if you're in a new area, or if your kids are not in an activity as someone else that it just becomes really hard to make friends. Now, these complex emotions that are there, we do need them. Hopefully we're evolving emotionally, and so we do need them, but we still benefit from the basic ones as well. So it's really good that we see that those emotions come back. They don't get replaced or eliminated. They belong in headquarters as well. Another line, and I think this one broke me because I know the world my children have, and I can't keep it from changing. They're going to grow. But there's a line in there where one of the little emotions says, maybe this is what happens when you grow up. You feel less joy. And it's so easy when we're kids, hopefully, to feel joy. You can just find joy in meeting some random kid you've never spoken to before at the park. You can find joy in your activities. You can find joy in a candy bar. You can find joy in trick-or-treating. You can find joy in the holidays. And these things that bring children so much joy, something switches for us and things start to bring us stress. Holidays would be a great example. Kids love holidays. They bring so much joy. And then as an adult, don't they bring us so much stress and anxiety? Like, who runs the switchboard for you if you think of Christmas? Does anxiety pop up there, or is it joy? And I think that's just a good thing for us to look at and recognize, man, what happened here? Because having less joy is not the goal. When we invite these other emotions in, we want to see it as multifaceted, right? That they can all be there. Sure, there's parts of a holiday that might bring me anxiety, but we don't want that to be the whole case. We want joy to still be the overwhelming emotion. Do you ever feel yourself fighting to put joy in charge? Like fighting and pushing back on the negativity? Because I know that I do. For me, that's very real. And I have these inside-out characters in my office, and I'll sometimes ask clients, and I see primarily adults, but I say, who is it who's running this situation right now in whatever it is you're going through? Which emotion? And what needs to happen for us to tell that emotion, you can go now, I'm okay. You can let go. I think that another part of the movie that just was so emotional for me is that anxiety goes absolutely haywire. it spirals. It gets worse and worse and worse and more intense. And headquarters is going completely out of control and no one knows what to do. And it's just like this big whirlwind. And you're seeing the physical effects on the main character, Riley. Her heart is racing. She's sweating. She's tapping her leg. She's losing her mind. She doesn't know what to do. She has no idea what's going on in her head. Can you relate to that? I mean, I can. I can see that in my teenage years. And nobody told me. At the time, mental health wasn't the discussion it is now, but no one told me that's what's happening. That's who's running your world. And you need to work on being able to set that aside sometimes and let another part rule your world. Things that had once brought me joy were now all being overwhelmed by anxiety. So I understood Riley, and I understand Riley even today, because there are times when things brought me joy, and I have to sit back and say, what is happening that joy's not running the show? Why is it anxiety? What needs to change for me to invite joy back in? So anxiety's going nuts, but then she ends up completely frozen, right? It's like this nothing else to do. And joy just stands there and they're all yelling, you can let her go. And you think anxiety's going to just consume her forever because it's looking that way. It's like totally out of control. None of the other emotions could get to the board. The spiral can't seem to end. But then finally, anxiety gives up. It lets go. And you're watching all this kind of play out, and then you're seeing kind of this space for a second where everything calms, and then you see a new sense of self kind of build with all the emotions. So there's thoughts like, maybe I'm selfish, but maybe I'm kind, right? Like it's this mixed bag of things. And all of the emotions come together, all of them, and give this big hug around this core sense of self. They're all invited in. They're all welcome. And it was this really beautiful piece because that's what makes Riley Riley. That's the point of the movie. And the idea is for you, that's what makes you you. It's the things that are different, the things that are maybe more intense for you. Maybe you're angry more, but maybe you find a lot of joy in small things, right? It could be this multifaceted approach. But the self-acceptance, I don't know that that's always shown well. I love that it was shown to children. Like, what if someone had told me when I had all these emotions in my head and I didn't understand what was going on, that you're fine just the way you are. These things are all supposed to be here. You'll learn how to navigate them. And sometimes it feels really hard, but they do all belong here. And just give this big self-acceptance piece. I really loved that because that was the idea of this is what makes Riley Riley. And just seeing like the emotions in my brain and kind of visualizing that from an individual perspective of what if they gave me a hug? Like what if you saw the emotions in your brain just give you a hug and say, hey, we all belong here. We all serve a purpose. You're going to have a great life with all of us here. You just have to navigate and manage us a little bit better maybe. The next thing that I love is Joy goes back to the board and you just see the love of the game. Riley's playing hockey and you see the love of the game come over. And I think that's really important. I think we see that sometimes with our kids. Maybe a sport, that would be a good example. A sport that they loved, that originally brought them joy. And then instead these other emotions move in. Maybe they're feeling fear that they're going to screw up. Maybe they're feeling anxiety. Maybe they're feeling sad all the time about the game if they lose or make a mistake. And then joy gets pushed out. So sometimes we can reset. And in this movie, they showed that. The main character still loved her sport, but she had to just do it for the joy of it and had to shove those other emotions to the side when she was doing this activity. Is there anything in your life that you do that you used to just love? It could be your career. It could be an activity. It could be parenting. It could be who knows what. But the joy has gotten shoved away and a different emotion is running the show. If that's you, I want to encourage you to tell that emotion you can take a break. Thanks for being here, but you just need to be tame and subdued, and I don't need you to actively run the show all the time. And that's kind of how the movie ends. Anxiety's still there. It doesn't disappear. It's never going to totally be gone. But they figure out a way to calm it. Oh, anxiety, thanks. But now you've been up here too long, so now you go sit and rest in your little chair. And what if you did that? What if the day you're sitting there super anxious about something, you remind that emotion, you can take a break now. Thanks for being here, but you go sit over there and I'm going to just maybe exist with another emotion for a while. Now, some of you are listening to this and you think I'm nuts and you think, how is she a therapist? But I just want to make sure that you understand there's always visuals out there. There's always things that we can find that help us understand our mental health better. And when I watched this movie, I just felt like it was so clear to me and so clear to the younger me, right? I mean, even if you watch this movie for younger you, to give some validation to when you thought you were losing your mind and you thought you were going crazy, it feels like that. Those emotions come in hard and fast, and no one necessarily prepares us for them. So with all of that, I hope you give Inside Out 2 a chance. It would be a great movie to watch with your family. Even if you don't have kids, it would be a great movie to watch with someone or just yourself. Because when I saw that movie, I just saw myself, and I saw a reminder to have self-acceptance for me, to be compassionate to me, to allow myself the option of saying, hey, you know what? I had the wrong emotion in charge and I made the wrong call here, to learn from these mistakes, to not get it right every time. These emotions are totally going to lead us astray. That's why we go back to the cognitive behavioral therapy of thought, feeling, behavior. But sometimes it doesn't go the way we want it to. And I just appreciated that movie making space for that. So I hope you found some space for yourself today and whatever emotions are in your headquarters. And remember, you can change them, you can control them, and they all serve a purpose, and they all provide you some self-acceptance. Thanks for listening. Until next time.
Live radio, local podcasts, the Frederick Podcast Network at listenfrederick.com.
Just like a stick could be anything to a child, the future could be anything to an anxious adult.